Nels, are you gonna? Oh, it looks like you just unmuted. Okay. Nels, I'm still not getting any audio from you.
What about me?
All right, now I'm getting something.
I just turned my mic on. The owl might not have any sound, but the mics do.
All right.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 8th meeting of the IURA's Economic Development Committee. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll start with, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? No? And have we received any public comment? Please. You have 3 minutes once you begin. I bet you've never heard that.
Not a member of the public. I'm a staff member for the city of Ithaca, but for those that don't know me, my name is Tom Knipe, serve as Deputy Director of Economic Development for the city of Ithaca. Derek, nice to see you. I think the last time I saw you was on the basketball court, so nice to see you in this context. Yeah, and I read the agenda and I just wanted to say thank you to Nels and the committee for taking up the issue of moving forward with you know, a sale process or starting one for the end of Cherry Street. That's obviously a pretty significant parcel, 6 acres in City of Ithaca. It's an opportunity for us to expand the tax base potentially, to welcome businesses or services that we need in the city. So whatever we can do in terms of additional soil investigations, in terms of I spoke with Nels before the meeting and suggested that we think about this in terms of a marketing approach as well. There may be some interest in that in those parcels expressed, which may be the approximate reason for the committee taking this up. But I regularly, as your economic development person for the city, field inquiries from businesses that are looking for sites. We have very, very few opportunities for light manufacturing, living wage job types of businesses to locate in the city. So, and that's, a prime location for that. And so I would encourage us as we spread the word about that opportunity to cast a wide net and to try to think about it in terms of an opportunity to grow the city's tax base, to grow manufacturing jobs in the city, and see if we can get some folks interested to potentially use those parcels for the highest and best use for the city. And that requires us, again, to do some significant outreach and marketing so that would-be proposers can find out about it and think about it and hopefully put in. So that's what I wanted to say. But I'll also make myself available now since I don't come to all these meetings to invite you to ask me any questions if you have any about stuff we're working on. And if the agenda doesn't fit, and you're interested, I'm happy to come back and give a report to the committee at a later time.
Thank you very much. Procedurally, just we'll dispose of public comment, but then if you can hang out, if there are questions for you once we get to new business, that'd be great. With that, I'll just ask for a review of the February and March minutes. May I have someone move? Moved by Donna, seconded by Derek. Any discussion on these? All those in favor? And those are adopted 5-0. All right, now moving to new business. I will summarize the resolves on this first item, which is to authorize the disposition process for land at the southerly end of Cherry Street. It is resolved that the IURA hereby authorizes staff to issue and advertise an RFEI to solicit proposals to purchase and develop some or all of the IURA 6-acre site located at the southerly end of Cherry Street. Be it further resolved that the RFEI shall incorporate the following guidelines: sales price, fair market value is preferred, eligible use, any use permitted in the Cherry Street district or by the planned unit development process, which requires the use to be in compliance with Plan Ithaca and deliver at least one long-term significant community benefit. Preferred use option 1 are projects that advance IURA's mission to improve social, physical, and economic characteristics of the city by expanding access to quality, affordable housing, strengthening neighborhoods and the local economy. Preferred use 2 are projects that improve the local economy by attracting, creating, and sustaining quality employment opportunities and expanding the tax base. And that the IURA may designate one or more respondents as qualified eligible sponsor of an urban renewal project and enter into negotiations leading to negotiated sale of part or all of the project site without further public solicitation. Be it further resolved that the following scoring system shall be used to evaluate the RFEI responses: 30% economic benefits, 30% community benefits, and 40% qualifications, experience, and capacity of respondents. And finally, be it further resolved that the IURA requests the Economic Development Committee to review the RFEI responses and recommend next steps in the disposition process that may include but not be limited to recommending designation of one or more qualified eligible sponsors to be eligible to purchase property, to undertake and approve urban renewal project, and negotiate terms and conditions for such disposition. I so move. Is there a second? Seconded by Donna. Discussion. Nels.
Just want to point out that in the resolve that had the guidelines for the RFEI, I put in for preferred use, I was thinking of those as one or the other to choose to put in there to give guidance to respondents. Option 1 is our mission statement for the agency, very broad. Option 2 is a little more focused on economic development benefits. So you may want to think we could include them both, but it would, if the better we can guide people on the projects that we're seeking, probably it's a better use of our resources and their resources, so they're not bringing in something that's not going to fly very well. But that was my thought here by highlighting those 2 different options for the preferred category of use.
So your recommendation, if I'm understanding you correctly, is to propose to strike one rather than use it as an and or.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be clear.
Siobhan, you had your hand up as well.
I did have a question, but if we wanted to discuss that first, since Nels has brought it up, that makes sense.
My personal feeling is I think that the first of the 2 options, just being in line with the IURA's mission, makes it a cleaner solicitation, but I'm not wedded to that. Chuck?
It covers a little more ground, so I would agree.
Tom, please.
I noted that that first option included a reference to housing, which is the IURA's mission. This particular parcel is in an area of the city which does not allow housing by zoning. So that created confusion for me when I read this, and I don't know if others would have similar confusion or not.
Donna.
Well, especially given what he just said, I would vote for including option 2 because we really need, it's my belief that we really need to attract more businesses to the area. And I'm sympathetic with Tom's earlier plea that we look out for opportunities to attract businesses. I think we're making really good progress on developing housing throughout the city. And if, as Tom pointed out, we can't have housing there anyway, let's focus on jobs.
Siobhan, I think you had another hand.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially if it's not possible to develop housing there. I will say in the mission statement of the IURA, I appreciate that it references both the social and physical characteristics of the city as well. And I would have a preference for including some mention of the social aspect in our preferred use line as well. So perhaps that could be added into the beginning of this second option.
Are we wedded to the wording on either of those options? Okay.
Just one clarification regarding the zoning. So the Cherry Street District zone does not allow residential use south of Cecil Malone. The rest of the Cherry Street District and all the waterfront does allow housing. However, it is in a planned unit overlay zone. So someone can come forward and propose a use that's not allowed under the zoning and seek common council approval. It's essentially a kind of a structured rezoning, and in return, they have to show that it's in compliance with the comprehensive plan overall, and that they have to provide an extra special community benefit from their project to garner the common council approval. It's a pretty laborious process. You've got to go through common council, back to planning board, and back to common council to get it. But this is one of those areas where that is an option if somebody wants to pursue it. So housing is not regularly permitted in this area, but it could be potentially under a plan unit development application.
I will just note, I think kind of going back to my earlier point and what Chuck had said, I still lean towards the first option for a couple of reasons. I'm sympathetic to what Tom and Donna have raised. I will note that, you know, this resolution as currently constituted does task this committee with reviewing said responses anyhow. And right, we are noting that about a third of this score is going to be contingent on whatever the economic benefits of the project are to be. I think that maybe helps balance out some of my trepidation around the uncertainty in the building materials market and the lending market. And I would rather cast a wider net on the scope of potential eligible projects that this committee were to then review and winnow down than sort of unnecessarily hamstring ourselves on the front end. But again, that's just my perspective on that. Other discussion? Donna.
To the issue of a PUD, it seems unlikely that there could be an acceptable PUD that would include both housing and manufacturing. I can't imagine such a thing, but maybe that's a lack of imagination. And it seems odd to include the criterion of strengthening neighborhoods in an area that, to my understanding, isn't a neighborhood. There's nothing there right now. It is true that option number 1 includes strengthening the local economy, which would include developing businesses, but it doesn't say anything about extending the tax base, which I think is also important. Can we collapse the two somehow? Expanding access.
Just as kind of a point of information, I
Yes.
haven't kept up with it, but isn't Southworks trying to do exactly the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Residential plus clean manufacturing and creating a neighborhood. So it's not unique to try to do that. It's difficult perhaps, but not necessarily unique.
This is the third time around for this RFEI process, actually. So round 1 was Emmy's Organics, which didn't go forward largely due to the soil conditions and their timeline. Option, then in 2020, John Guttridge came forward and had a hospitality use mixed combined with a beverage manufacturer on the site were the two main components. So there was a little mix of a manufacturing retail component with basically kind of hotel rooms or some sort of rental opportunities, short-term rental opportunities. That largely failed due to a couple of things. The pandemic started 3 weeks after he got legal rights to pursue his project. And the issue of hospitality and getting financing for hospitality when the city hadn't really sorted out its policy on encampments was a major concern for him as well. So those issues have both passed, are a little bit in our rearview mirror. And so some conditions have changed, but there were some pretty creative different uses trying to figure out how to best optimize that site. But it does have limitations. As you've noted, there's a railroad track on one side, and then there's basically light industrial uses up the road from it on Cherry Street. And the asset of the Black Diamond Connector Trail being installed along the waterfront edge of this site, I believe it's planned to get commenced this summer for construction to connect that Black Diamond Trail so you could get all the way to Buttermilk Falls, and eventually that will then extend over to Treeman as well.
Donna.
I have off the topic now of option 1 or 2. When I first read this, I was scratching my head trying to remember, aren't there talks about um, a county service on Cherry Street for a homeless shelter or something like that? Am
do
I
have a-
mistaken about that?
They've purchased the Found site, which is the parcel further up,
North,
north,
okay, got it.
Right.
which is where they've announced that they're going to be building their purpose-built shelter.
A purpose-built shelter, got it, okay. All right, thank you.
I guess, Nels, just to kick it over to you for a second, how do you place relative weights on either preferred use versus the scoring criteria? Because for me, the scoring criteria feel much more unambiguously clear, that the RFEI responses would need to incorporate a significant economic development component to be competitive. And I view that as kind of like the ceiling of what we're aiming for versus right now discussing like what's the floor on acceptable. And again, for that, just given market uncertainties and development uncertainties, I'd rather cast a wider net on prospective projects.
Yeah, I think that can work very well. I mean, the other fact is it's the Economic Development Committee that's reviewing the proposals. Will be clearly stated as well. So there's a sense that there is anticipation, there's some economic benefit as well as community benefit for any project that comes forward. Yeah, so I don't think it's something that we have to labor over. It's just if there was a clear consensus, we'd want to move one way or the other, but there's a lot of diversity here. And so maybe we just choose one and go with it. And option 1 is fine. It is our mission statement. It makes perfect sense to include our mission statement.
I'll just for the sake of having a motion, I'll move that we strike the 4th bullet, which would include preferred use 2, rather. Is there a second on that? Second by Siobhan. Discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that carries 4-1 with Donna Fleming against. Now we have the main motion, which is the motion as moved. Any further discussion on this? Siobhan?
Yeah, I did just have a question. So I was looking through the community benefit checklist of when they end up doing the application, and I see that one of the criteria or potential criteria is the commitment to pay employees a living wage, which we have listed at $15.37 an hour. And I was curious where that number comes from.
That number comes probably from the 2018 version of this. This is just the template. It would need to be updated for certain. And I wanted to, should the resolutions be passed, I wanted to ask you to take a look at this template to see what other questions you might want to have answered or other elements of it. So thank you for pointing that out. It is way out of date. I believe the most recent living wage study is pretty close to $24.50.
I think 2482 maybe.
Right. I have communicated that I think there's some questions about the methodology, but it's still, it's certainly not $15 per hour.
Further debate on this motion? All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. I'll move the second item under new business, our procurement of professional service resolution, and I'll again just read those resolves very briefly. Resolve that the IURA hereby authorizes staff to procure geotechnical analysis for the project site at a cost not to exceed $10,000. Be it further resolved that upon IURA designation of a qualified and eligible sponsor to potentially purchase part or all of the project site, staff is hereby authorized to procure professional services to appraise the fair market value of the site at a cost not to exceed $6,000. And that be it further resolved, the above referenced professional services shall derive from the IURA industrial park account as so mentioned here with the aforementioned balance. I so move. Is there a second? Seconded by Donna. Any discussion on this? And all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now turn to the IURA adopted recommended 2025 HUD entitlement action plan. Now let's turn that over to you.
Really more informational. The committee made recommendations that were brought forward to the IURA. Neighborhood Investment Committee had some alternative modifications. At the end of the day, my estimate of how much money would be available for economic development was a little bit smaller than what the Neighborhood Investment Committee recommended. And so they were able to fully fund all of the job training programs as requested. And my assumption was that some of the housing projects were going to get a little bit higher amount, but that's not the way it worked out. So there was more money left over in the Community Development Block Grant Program category, and they decided to fully fund all the job training programs. So that's the big change, I guess, from the recommendation. Maybe next time I'll be a little more expansive in my recommendation.
Going into the loan fund?
Oh, about $13,000 will flow into the loan fund as well. So there'll be a little bit more, but we have over 200,000 at the moment. That'll grow to 260, or, well, with the 13, it'll be about 270 to 275,000 available for loaning once the new program year begins August 1. So that historically would meet our need, but we're going into uncertain times. So maybe it won't in the future, but we'll work with that as we
More
go
money to
forward.
put into all those factories that are coming back
You're right.
this year.
Right.
Any further discussion on Nels's update? All right, then I'll turn, I'm sorry. No, I'll turn to the IURA grant disbursement, loan and receivables report.
So yeah, you should have for those of you who are IURA members, this is a repeat of what you saw at the last meeting, but for IED members, this is new information. So there's the grant summary where we show the disbursement schedule of our grants awarded under the home and CDBG categories. We also include the loan repayment report, which you're familiar with, and the lease repayment or lease payment report. Everybody's current on the loan repayment report, so that's great news. The leases, we have one delinquency by 1 month, and that's the RIBS program. They have, that lease has now been concluded, so they no longer are leasing that space. It'll be used for a pump station development project. And then in terms of the grants, everybody's got their new awards for the upcoming year. We're trying to push people to spend as much as they can early, because we have that requirement that we can't have more than 150% of our most recent award on unspent at a snapshot at the end of May. We're not going to make it this year because we have a number of CDBG projects that are a little bit slower in development. The main ones are the INHS homeowner rehab program. They've been having real trouble with finding contractors to implement the program on a timely basis. And 1 or 2 of their homeowners backed out after moving through the process, but were unable to complete it. So there's about $200,000 floating around, a little more than 200,000, actually $240,000 waiting to be spent in that program. And then we have the sidewalk on Cecil Malone, which was funded at $180,000. That's not going to be spent in all likelihood by the end of May, but it is under contract. It has been awarded. So we have a good story to tell that we will get there, but we're probably not going to meet that particular spend down date. So just be aware that we might get a letter from HUD saying you didn't meet your spend down. In the past, when that has occurred, or it never occurred to us recently, but they have said that if you don't make it, then they're going to have a workout plan with us. And then if that doesn't result in a better outcome in the next year, then they will move towards a more punitive kind of approach. Ultimately, it can result in loss of funding or loss of a portion of our funding if we don't comply with it. But my understanding is since the pandemic, many communities have fallen behind in their expenditure rate. And so there may be some, different view from HUD in terms of that spend down. It's particularly hard for a small community that has a loan fund because you want to keep enough money in your loan fund to make loans, but that's kind of viewed as dead money from their perspective. So again, that's a challenge for us, but we'll work to try to meet the requirement, but it's likely that we'll miss that target this year. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you saw if you looked at any of the grants and had questions about any of the projects. Sometimes we focus on just the economic development ones, but sometimes the other ones have economic development repercussions as well.
All right, seeing none, thank you for that update. Staff report.
Don't think I have any additional information. Well, one thing just to know, we did meet with Southworks, as you mentioned. They're trying to have kind of a regular meetings with stakeholders as they work through the project. They've got, it's a very exciting project in many ways with lots of opportunities, but there's a lot of challenges, it turns out. It's a good thing that the city supported them in their Restore New York grant application to abate lead paint and asbestos, because the more they search for it, the more they find it at the site. And that's turning out to be a barrier for them to lease out space, because a tenant wants to know, when is it going to be cleaned up and ready for my occupancy? And that requires them to undertake a pretty expensive process. So they're going to be working on the front building, building 24, the larger kind of 4-story-ish looking whiter building at the front. And they've already completed some abatement on other portions of the site, but that's going to be a higher cost than they expected for that component to address the abatement needs.
21 needed as well, or no?
All of them do. That's right. Yep. I think every building that they've identified so far for tenant use has some abatement requirements. So it's a challenge for a brownfield site to work on. But they're working closely with the state of New York and trying to figure out how they can best figure out a plan for infrastructure as well as abatement. And that's kind of where they are at this current point. So looking forward to more.
Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, so that's all I had.
All right. With that, hope everybody who is impacted by ICSD spring break next week enjoys it. I know I will. And with that, our next meeting date is Tuesday, May 13th. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Donna, seconded by Siobhan. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Great. If anybody has any comments on that application form beyond the living wage question, please let me know, and we can, try to factor in, ask another question or ask it differently. It's kind of a summary list of we're trying to ask them to identify what are the community benefits, what are the economic development benefits. We don't expect an applicant to be able to check all of them. Although if they did, they would probably score pretty well in the evaluation. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Just curious about whether any of the existing businesses down Perry Street are aware of this and whether there's any possibility of having to expand it.
We're going to market 2 of the existing businesses at Cherry Street as one of the groups that might have